You're now live on YouTube.
Thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Council. The seating plan of the Council chamber has been reorganised to provide as much safe an environment as we can for members and officers in attendance. Please maintain a social distance if you can, avoid disturbing screens, and be aware that you are advised to wear a mask throughout the meeting. Please follow directions of committee services and enter and exit from the building. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to update you on the systems being used and confirm that officers in remote attendance are present. Louis?
Thanks very much, Chair. I'll just do a quick roll call. So if you could answer when I call your name. Anthony Roach.
Yes, good evening.
Thank you. Ian Cooper.
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Thank you. And Melanie Stimpson.
Yes, good evening.
Thank you. Are there any other officers in the Zoom call? No? Okay, thank you. This meeting is being audio recorded and filmed and live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel. The recordings will be available to view on the Council's website and YouTube channels after the meeting has ended. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. The normal procedure rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. At this evening's meeting for item 10, which is the budget item, all votes, including on any amendments, will be a recorded vote. The electronic voting system will record these votes. There will be no roll call of members for each vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? No? Back to you, Chair.
First item, apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillors John Bishop, Tony Hunter, Jim McNally, Kay Frost, June Cowell, Lisa Nash, Michael Weeks, Gary Grindle, and Ian Moody. Are there any other apologies? Yes, Councillor Brown.
So Carol Stanya.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes from the meeting on the 20th of January 2022. I propose we take as read and approve as a true record of proceedings the minutes of the meetings held on the 20th of January 2022. Can I have a seconder, please?
It's terribly hard to hear you at the moment, and I wonder whether the volume could be turned up in any way. I'm really not wanting to be rude or disruptive, believe it or not. It just is that we can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Can I proceed like this? Can I have a seconder for the minutes? Councillor Dennis Harburg to second. Thank you. Can we have the vote?
Chair, that motion has carried.
Thank you. Item 3, notification of other business. There is none. Item 4, Chair's announcements. 1, audio recording. In accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recordings will be available to view on ModGov and video via YouTube after the meeting. Climate emergency. Members are reminded that this council has declared a climate emergency. This is a serious decision and means that, as this is an emergency, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out our various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out by the chair's announcements on the agenda. Rules of debate. Please can I remind you that the normal procedure rules in respect to debate and time to speak will apply. No speeches may be made after the mover has moved a motion and explain the purpose of it until the motion has been seconded. The proposer has a right of reply on the motion. The proposer of a motion to amend has no right to reply. When seconding a motion or amendment, a member may reserve their speech until later in the debate. In accordance with the Constitution, please can members ensure that no speech exceeds 5 minutes without the consent of the chair. I've given consent for Councillor Albert to speak longer than that on the budget item. Standing to speak, members are reminded there is no longer any requirement to stand while addressing the council. And by remaining seated is both safer and ensure your comments are accurately recorded by the microphones. Comfort break. I plan to call for a break around 9 p.m. or at a suitable break in the business. In the event of a break, please follow directions of the committee services team. Chair's charity fundraising event. The fundraiser in aid of my chosen charities will now take place on the 22nd of May. Please mark that date in your diaries, and I hope to see you there. Thank you. Public participation. There's none. Questions from members. There are no questions submitted by members. Notice of motions. There have been no motions submitted. Items referred from other committees. 8A, referral from Cabinet, Revenue Budget 2022 to 2023. I will take this as item 10. 8B, referral from Cabinet, Investment Strategy, Integrated Capital and Treasury. I will take this as item 11. Item 9, change to polling place and polling stations. Melly Stimpson to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. The report presented is to agree the designation of polling places to come into effect at the upcoming elections in May, as several polling stations that were previously designated are no longer viable options. The changes required are explained in paragraphs 8.3 and 8.4 of the report, and included within the report is a proposed amendment to the Constitution, and I have nothing further to add to that, including within the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a proposer for the recommendations, please? Thank you, Councillor Dennis Harburg. I can have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Ruth Brown. Right, shall we go to the debate on this? Sorry. Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to say, I think this is very sensible arrangements that have been made. Very pleased to see that the ward councillors have been consulted in this. And I'm sure that the residents, once they realise their polling stations have changed, I'm sure they'll be flooding out to vote in May.
Thank you. Any other comments? Should we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion has carried.
Thank you. Item 10, Revenue Budget 2022-2023. Councillor Elizabeth Dennis Harburg to introduce.
Right. If I can get my tablet to behave, that would be good, wouldn't it? There we go. So this evening, the council has the duty to set a budget for the forthcoming year. In September, we approved our new council plan for the period 2022 to 2027, which sets out our new council priorities, which are people first, sustainability, and a brighter future together. That plan was agreed alongside a medium-term financial strategy, which highlighted that our priorities and the resources that we have to deliver them need to go hand in hand. So there's going to be no more putting the budget before policy making. They are going to work together. The budget that we are proposing tonight continues that theme, and I'm quite proud of the work that councillors Albert and North have done alongside our officers in pulling it together for us. And it sets out how we will fund our priorities for the coming year. Unfortunately, we can't deliver everything that we would like to do for reasons that I'm sure many of us know and appreciate. And clearly, we don't have the money at the moment to do so. We have to plan on the basis that a new government funding formula will reduce the funding that we can retain from the business rates that we collect. And we've also got to consider the impact of inflation, which is at its highest level for almost 30 years. And unfortunately, on top of all of that, there's this thing called COVID-19, which hasn't quite gone away yet. We are making substantial allowances in our budget for the next 2 years, which is on top of the amounts we have had to fund, even after government support in the last 2 years. We are therefore working on the assumption that we will need to be able to deliver around £1.5 million of savings per year by 2026, 2027. That's a lot. They could come from efficiencies, service transformation, income generation, or service changes. Unfortunately, years of austerity under successive governments means that transformation means that the opportunities for efficiencies are pretty much all gone. We're not quite at peak efficiency yet, but clearly it's going to become harder and harder for us to make gains and deliver the added value services that our residents really desperately need us to provide them. We are committed to a service transformation programme that we hope will improve the way people interact with us and also save some money. We remain committed to developing income and acting more commercially, although we have to be realistic about what can be achieved given the economic impacts of COVID-19. We therefore have to plan on the basis that we might need to deliver a significant amount of savings through service changes. While I'd love to ease the burden on our residents by not increasing our district council element of their council tax, the reality is that it's not viable if we want to be a council that delivers the services that our residents value, and if we want to be sustainable in the medium term. The funding the government let us retain, just 12.5% of what we actually collect, is determined on the basis that we will increase our council tax by the maximum amount allowed without a referendum. So we must propose that the council tax element of this for this council is increased on that basis, which is in line with our medium-term financial strategy. And that increase is a £5 increase on a Band D property, or less than 10 pence a week, with the increases on other bands pro rata to that. As a percentage, this is a 2.1% increase. With the increases proposed by both County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner, it actually means that our share of the overall bill is going down. So not only do government not provide us with the essential funding that we need in a sensible manner to deliver essential services to residents, we're losing money, and the Police and Crime Commissioner and County Council continue to get more. We shared our draft budget proposals with all members in budget workshops in November, and we also asked for contributions and ideas for ways that the council can save money, either through spending less, delivering more, or generating income. The opposition group did not provide any suggestions to us through this workshop process. But I do hope that the level of participation and engagement that we had from all members in coming up with this budget will assist in the agreement of our budget as a council tonight, which I believe is a reasonable balance between a short and medium term focus and is a solution to a very, very difficult task. I will now ask Councillor Albert to expand on our proposed budget.
Thank you. Councillor Albert.
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak with my mask on. If I have any problems in hearing us, colleagues, I'm happy to remove it. And thank you, Chair, for allowing me some additional time to speak this evening on this agenda item. And it's a delight, Val, to have you as my brilliant Beaton Ward councillor in the chair tonight. And it's a great honour for the ward. I would like to start with some further thanks in case I forget later. I'd like to thank my deputy and our Labour and Liberal Democrat joint administration, Councillor Sam North, for his support and advice. And Sam and I have the great fortune in our portfolio to deal with two excellent senior officers and their teams. Ian Cooper and all the finance and other teams that report to him. Our external auditors continue to commend Ian and all our finance staff for the work they do in managing our budgets and quickly and effectively preparing our accounts for audit. And then I'd like to thank Jo Dufficy and all her staff. Their successful management of customer-facing issues, including council tax, business rates, and council tax reduction scheme, has enhanced the reputation of the council amongst our residents. Jo's team have also helped to design and implement our statutory and local discretionary business grant schemes. We've paid out nearly £10 million so far in this financial year, close to 2,000 businesses. Indeed, we've just launched our 3 new discretionary schemes to support local businesses who are not entitled for other help, or looking to move premises, or are needing other advice and support. And indeed, I can also announce this evening we've just appointed some consultants as part of the Welcome Back Fund money that we've received to look at our sort of town centre strategies, post-COVID strategies, and help to develop some medium and longer term development strategy to assist the town centres develop successfully over the next decade. And that will feed into our wider work as part of the local plan and town centre strategies. And this is the way that this joint administration continues to help our local businesses and revive our high streets through progressive and innovative use of money that we have available to us. Now, when I spoke at our last budget setting meeting, we'd hoped to be able to see an end to the pandemic. And while there's been progress, this has still been a very painful year for many people and businesses across our district. Our thoughts are with those who've lost loved ones and friends. And in particular tonight, I especially miss seeing in this chamber my Hitchin councillor colleague and the other Barnet Football Club supporter, Paul Clark. We do miss you, Paul. In coming before you tonight to set a budget for this council, we're providing the building blocks for the priorities set by our council plan, a plan that was welcomed and overwhelmingly adopted across all parties in this chamber. This Labour and Liberal Democrat joint administration set out some very clear priorities for the next 5 years up to 2027 against the backdrop of the continuing impact of the pandemic on our people, towns and economy, ongoing challenges of Brexit and continued uncertainty about how central government will support local councils. This budget supports the delivery of our priorities and made sure we make best use of taxpayers' money as we move forward. As Councillor Dennis Harbert has said, we will put people first, we will deliver sustainable services, we will enable a brighter future together. As joint administrations have sought that the resources of the council, particularly our staff, have been diverted when we can to new work arising from the pandemic. But despite that workload forced on us by the pandemic, we've maintained the drive to deliver our ambitious programme of work, a climate change strategy and a biodiversity agenda, including planting 10,000 trees, leading at the Hearts Growth Board on reviving our town centres and town centre businesses, supporting food provision and mental health and wellbeing initiatives across the district, support for homeless people, bringing our communities together through new arts and cultural networks and incredibly moving events like recently on Holocaust Memorial Day, developing a new place narrative, including the beginnings of a new tourism strategy, ensuring our bins are emptied and our streets kept tidy while acting vigorously against fly tippers. However, this evening, the council is required to set a budget for 22-23, and in doing so must be mindful of the impact of any decisions it makes on the ability to set a balanced budget over the medium term. It would be great to think that the impacts of COVID-19 have gone away, but unfortunately, we're still seeing the impacts in terms of additional costs, additional work and reductions in our income. Our reserves have been hit by the 1.5 million we had to fund last year and the forecast net impact this year of over £1 million. While government has celebrated the work of local authorities like ours, they've not come through with the funding they promised up front. As set out in the budget report, we are prudently budgeting for a further 1.7 million in 22-23 and over 800,000 in 23-24. The reason the 22-23 total is the highest is because we're getting no further support from government. We have reason to hope that the situation will be better than this, but my strong view is to err on the side of caution at this time. This is all in addition to the impact on our council tax income from the additional council tax reduction scheme we're providing to our residents. We're facing the impacts of inflation. This has already gone over 5% and looks like it will rise further before it peaks. And it's then looking like it will take until at least the end of 2023 before it comes down to the 2% target level. In our budget forecast, we've tried to estimate the impact on our contract inflation, making an additional allocation for both 22-23 and 23-24. We've currently retained our pay inflation forecast at 2% per year. In the absence of an agreed pay award for the year we are in, let alone next year, 22-23, this adds a high degree of uncertainty into the budget. Both of the above are in addition to the usual uncertainties that we face when setting a budget. There may be some glimmer that by the time we are setting the budget for 23-24, a new local government funding formula could be in place that will give us some degree of medium-term certainty, but that's not yet. In the meantime, we have to try and guess what the outcome of that formula might be. We're forced to make the prudent assumption that it could replicate the long-threatened negative revenue support grant and take away over 1.2 million more of the business rates that we collect. We could hope it will be better, but we can't plan on hope. Despite these more gloomy forecasts, we have done as much as we can in this budget to invest in this council and the priorities set out in our council plan. In some cases, we've been able to make savings whilst also delivering our priorities, such as changes to our grounds maintenance contract, which also deliver environmental and sustainability benefits. We continue to look for new ways to bring in money to the council to help avoid reducing services. We've got exciting ideas about generating further income from filming, museum nights and other events at the town hall and museum. We've also provided investment in our environmental health team to help ensure good food standards, as well as early investment in supporting the next local plan from 2031 onwards. Although it would be nice if the planning inspector would actually make some progress on the current one. We must always be able to respond and use new developments in IT to improve our customer services. We're continuing our investment in artificial intelligence software as part of a wider project to help us deliver online services and information that are available 24/7. This is a step change and help us to put people first. This includes a more accessible website that we've already launched and developing an online customer portal to provide easier access to key information about council services. However, we will never forget that not all our residents have or can use online services. There'll always be a place for face-to-face or telephone contact services. In other cases, we've been forced to make difficult decisions in order to deliver a sustainable budget and therefore a sustainable council. We'd like to have kept our garden waste charges at the current level, but as well as reflecting on what other councils are charging, we also felt that it was right that this service was not seen as being subsidised by those council taxpayers that did not have a garden or chose not to take up the service. Therefore, an annual 2%, 80 pence a year rise that is broadly in line with the increases in council tax is a fair way for charging for the garden waste service. This will be the first increase since 2018. It's below inflation and is already a smaller charge than most neighbouring councils, and at just over a penny a week seems fair and reasonable. Now this brings me on to council tax. It would be great if we could freeze council tax at current levels, but as Councillor Dennis Arberger said, that's plainly not viable. Government's announcement on funding for local authorities are based on councils increasing their council tax. And while I'm sure welcome for our residents in bands A to D properties, the government announcement of £150 help towards council tax does not directly reduce anyone's actual council tax bill. This was simply a means of making these payments via local authorities. The impact next year of a freeze in council tax would be a reduction in our funding of just under 250,000. Now, coincidentally, that's the cost of a one-way ticket for our Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, to go to Australia. I know it's tempting, but let's be clear. The annual impact of a freeze then increases to 265,000 by 26-27. And over that 5-year period alone, we'd have used up another 1.3 million of our reserves. Because of the way government limits how much we can increase council tax, we can never recover that lost funding, and the situation that just gets worse every year. To illustrate this, I note that Sam Chapman-Allen, chairman of the District Council Network and Conservative leader of Breckland District Council, said that councils face a triple whammy of rising inflation, higher wage costs from the lifting of the public sector pay freeze, and continuing pressures from the impact of COVID. He went on to say this leaves councils with an unpalatable choice between increasing council tax for hard-pressed local residents or cutting services that every local resident and businesses rely on. Now, I have sympathy and understand what he's saying, but what this joint administration has set out to achieve is something in between. A small increase in council tax, but as I explained earlier, alongside sensible and value for money investments to improve our services. As set out in our medium-term financial strategy, we're proposing to increase council tax by £5 a year, which equates to less than 10 pence a week. This will help to maintain the vital services we're delivering to residents. We're totally aware of the cost of living challenge being faced in North Herts. We've spent some of our taxpayer resources on helping to support those most in need through grants to local organisations. No one should have to choose heating or eating. We believe, though, what we're proposing equates favourably to what's happening across other district councils. And in terms of what residents will see on their council tax bills, what we're proposing is half the £10 a year increase being sought by the Conservative Police Commissioner for Hertfordshire. And as especially those colleagues here who are also elected to Hertfordshire County Council will know, the council tax increase being proposed by the Conservatives there, £58 a year, is nearly 12 times more than our proposed increase. Overall, under this joint administration, as Councillor Dennis Harburg has said, our share of the council tax bills will fall from 12.5 to 12.3%. This reduction of our share has been the case every year since this joint administration took control in 2019. Under our watch, we will always spend residents' money wisely and tax fairly. Now, even with this small increase and with uncertainty about a new funding formula, we may well need to find and deliver 1.5 million of savings over the next 5 years. Unfortunately, after too many years of austerity, there are hardly any, if any, genuine efficiencies left. And as has been shown by the investments we've needed to make in staffing, we believe some efficiency savings, so-called efficiency savings, have gone too far. We're hoping that a good proportion of those can be delivered through income generation and a transformation programme. But we have to face the reality that we may have to look to the way that council services are delivered. We're taking that very seriously. We've carried out a budget challenge process with officers to fully understand the cost of services that this council delivers. This has helped shape this budget. And if and when the time comes, we'll use that information to shape a full consultation with our residents and other stakeholders on the services they value the most. Well, a little bit yet.
Excuse me. Have I asked you to speak? Have I asked you to speak? Right. I did signal to you that Councillor Albert, could you continue, please?
Thank you. Before I move the recommendations in front of you and ask you to approve this budget, I need to briefly highlight a few areas of the report. Paragraph 5.2 on the statutory requirement to consult business ratepayers. 8.1 and 8.2 set out the outcome of the budget workshops. 8.4 set some of the staffing areas that we believe that it's right to restore some of the cuts made by the previous administration. These include environmental, health, food standards, licensing, planning, conservations and listed buildings. They improve our resilience and ability to respond to changing workloads. Paragraph 8.14 relates to the business rate pool. I can confirm that none of the councils have withdrawn, so we will be part of the pool next year. It has some risk, but it has potential for significant gains. Paragraph 8.16 details the reserves that we're holding for specific purposes. Each year, we review the planned use of each reserve to make sure that it's still relevant and the balance being held is sufficient. Paragraph 8.18 to 8.20 details how the recommended minimal general fund balance is calculated. The specific risks summarised in paragraph 8.19 and detailed in Appendix A are reviewed each year to ensure they reflect the most significant events that could affect the financial position of the council. This includes a challenge of the probabilities and impacts, as well as a cross-check against the risk register. 8.26 to 8.30 set out the review of the budget that has been undertaken by our Chief Finance Officer. That confirms the budget as set before you is robust and considers the adequacy of financial reserves. You'll also note under R18 in Appendix B, we're committed to undertaking a review of economic development strategy in 22-23 with a view to come back next year on the need for a full-time role on that work. This will sit well alongside the developing town centre and tourism strategies. For the record, I also covered at the last meeting the additional support offered to parish, town and community councils since the scheme was introduced in 2013. We've kept this under review and I can confirm that I propose the amount of 38,000 should continue again in 22-23. I hope this is welcome. I believe that despite the continuing challenge we face, this budget matches the ambitions of this joint administration alongside the need for prudence in these uncertain times for local government finances. The final local government funding settlement was approved by Parliament yesterday, which sets the final allocations for each council. Our allocation for two of the funding streams was higher than expected, mainly in relation to business rates multiplier compensation. Overall, it is an extra 57,000 of funding in 22-23. This is good news. It does give us a little extra leeway in the next financial year. However, as I'll come to, we're proposing some late amendments to the budget this evening. The Service Director of Resources has not amended the budget papers to reflect this yet. Instead, he will produce a revised budget summary to reflect this funding change and any other changes that are agreed tonight. This will be sent to members following this meeting. As I mentioned, Councillor Jarvis is proposing on behalf of the Joint Administration a budget amendment for your agreement. Chair, these have been tabled and be moved later in this debate at your discretion. To save time, I welcome support these amendments. They're both prudent and affordable. The first part of the amendment covers the additional swimming hours. We've listened to the petitioners carefully, and we were proposing a budget to extend the end of the outdoor pool season. The Wilding audit carried out for us. We're proposing an additional budget to carry out a number of further projects.
Councillor Albert?
Yep.
Can I just stop you there? Because I think you may be running onto the amendment.
You know, I'm just saying that these are things that I'm happy to support.
I think we'll leave that for a moment.
Okay.
Like to conclude?
Yep. To conclude, this joint administration has set out to influence and facilitate change across North Herts since we took control in 2019, to bring the best from both Labour and Liberal Democrat parties and colleagues. This joint administration will not stop thinking about tomorrow. If we stop, it will soon be here. But we do know that under this joint administration, it will be totally better than before, because yesterday has gone. At our heart is security, prosperity, and respect for our communities. These are our aspirations. Our aims to build a greener, fairer, and more caring North Herts. We're a cooperative council committed to finding better ways of working for and with local people for the benefit of their local community. We've engaged with our communities. We've stood up for our district while working in cooperation alongside other local authorities of all parties across this county. This budget will help deliver our progressive council plan and vital services for residents, and it will continue to restore some of the cuts made by the previous administration. And it will put us at the forefront of an agenda to fight climate change. But I recognise that this council is at its strongest when we work together across all party lines, all three parties. We've seen excellent work involving all the parties on major issues, on Brexit, COVID response and recovery, procurement policy. This budget was recommended to Cabinet by the Finance Audit and Risk Committee with cross-party support. Therefore, I hope we can all get behind this budget and go forward together into 22-23 for a sustainable and brighter future for the residents of North Herts. Chair, I can ask that we move the council support this budget and move the following recommendations, as in 2.1 to 2.5. If any of the members are carried, I will move a further update to recommendation 2.4 at the close of the debate. And in accordance with the legislation, when we vote on these discussions, I call for a recorded vote. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. I think that by its very nature, the report on the budget was going to be lengthy. Can I require that you do show me courtesy as the chair and not shout out? Thank you. Can we have a seconder, please? Councillor Sam North, you seconding?
Thank you, Chair.
can't
Yes,
see you.
delighted
There you
to
are.
second, and I will reserve my right to speak today.
Thank you. I shall take any amendments separately. Councillor Steve Jarvis has put forward an amendment, new resolution 2.6. Do you wish to move that amendment now, Councillor Jarvis? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, as Councillor Albert has highlighted, there are some significant steps forward that we're making in the budget. In terms of leisure, members will remember that nearly 18 months ago now, we committed to invest a significant amount of money to make sure that our leisure centres could continue to operate during the pandemic. And we've seen some really substantial progress in that respect, but this year's budget recognises that there is still further progress to be made there. And there are some real questions that need to be addressed about how we're going to return the council's leisure facilities to the position that they're in before the pandemic, and also to address some of the other issues that have been raised, and the particular one relating to open air pools and the petition that we received last time asking us to look at ways in which we could make better use of what is undoubtedly a valuable community asset, and do so in a way that is affordable to the council. In terms of green space, Councillor Albert has already mentioned that we've identified some significant changes to the way in which some of the council's green space will be managed, that both improve the biodiversity and environmental benefits from that space and provide some significant savings at the same time. Now, earlier, the council entered into a piece of work with Countryside Management to identify a lot more wilding opportunities across the district. I think more than 30 locations, and we have proceeded slowly along those, but there is clearly opportunity for taking further steps there. I therefore like to take advantage of some of the additional flexibility, a little extra leeway, I think Councillor Albert described it as, that is represented by the final local government settlement, and propose 3 minor additions to the spending. These are all proposals that are only for 1 year and don't affect any ongoing costs. So the first of those is the implementation of some additional wilding schemes from those set out in the wilding audit that was done for us by the Countryside Management Service at a total cost of 25k. To work with the user groups, both the people who came to see us when presenting the petition at the last meeting and other user groups and people who would be potential user groups, the open air pools, to investigate how we might keep the open air pools open for longer, and to set aside some funding to allow that to happen on whatever basis we can come up with, subject to a total cost limit of 25k. That will play for a small number of weeks unless we are able to identify ways to extend that by working with these groups. But I hope that we can identify how we can make much better use of these facilities at the ends of the seasons. And then finally, provision of some expert advice on the leisure market. As I mentioned earlier, there have been some significant challenges which are not limited to North Herts. We've all heard of the challenges that swimming pools and other leisure facilities have faced across the country. We're approaching the time when the leisure contract comes to an end. The council may need to make some significant decisions about how it deals with that, both in the light of COVID and in the light of the significant increase in energy costs, and in our desire to see better use of facilities such as the outdoor pools. So I'm also proposing that we should procure some detailed technical advice on how to do that, once again at a cost of not more than 25k. So I'd like to propose those as amendments as set out in the proposed amendment on the order paper, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Dennis Harburg to second.
With my right to speak as well, Chair.
Fine. Shall we debate this amendment 2.6? Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chair. I may just have to point out a small declaration of interest based upon that amendment. My daughter, my young teenage daughter, works at Stevenage Leisure as a recently qualified lifeguard on an ad hoc basis, 0 hours type contract. So she's technically an employee of Stevenage Leisure, albeit not a contracted one.
Yes, that's fine in relation to this item if you don't participate in this particular amendment debate, but I'm satisfied that if this is passed, that as part of the overall budget, it'd be fine for you to participate in that. Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And how very strange that the administration is amending their budget on the night, but there we go. They always come up with some new surprises for us. Just in relation of these, on the first little A, the implementation of additional wilding schemes, I welcome that, because certainly last year we had quite a debate on whether or not we should see more in the rewilding schemes of the district. But in the end, Councillor Harwood, who had put that forward, withdrew the motion that he was looking at. So it's very good to know that the administration have taken on board that there could be more to be done on wilding schemes. So I'm sure this side of the chamber, we welcome that. Certainly on B, that's again to investigate the potential of an extension of the open air pool. And again, having had that petition, I think again, the community groups that brought that to us, we're very welcome to see that, as there was a lot of debate on that night on how good it would be and to support that. Just on 3, the third one, little C here, I do actually think, just the way I read it, and perhaps it's just the way I read it, I just think it perhaps would have been a little clearer if it had actually said provision of expert leisure market pre-procurement and strategic investment advice at a cost of 25k in respect to the leisure contract service. The way it's written, it seems to be going to be retendering the contract for 25,000, which really would be value for money, wouldn't it, across the district? I just think that's just the way it is worded, but the mover and the second might like to take on that little bit of restructuring of their C, just the way just to me it's the way it has been run. Just on that though, I do find that it's very strange that, having gone through the budget workshops and all the service departments putting forward their growth items and what they wanted to see, that this hadn't been thought of until tonight. But again, if this is needed, then of course I'm sure that this is something that as you have stated, that you have got some more wiggle room in your budget, and this is the way that you wish to spend it. So therefore, I think from this side, you don't see any objections to the amendments that you are moving here. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just consulting. First of all, these amendments were on the website certainly earlier on today, if not yesterday. I was just also talking to Jess about the wording of C. Does it read correctly? You're probably talking to the wrong person because I'm a lawyer. It reads fine to me. I think we'll understand that, but and I'm content the amendment fits. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Strong. Councillor Dennis Harburg.
Thank you, Chair. I'm reluctant to prolong things any longer than we absolutely need to, given that it seems to me that we are pretty much in agreement on the amendment. However, I just sort of wanted to clarify, perhaps, and assist the leader of the opposition, if I might. These particular amendments, the money for this wasn't just sort of found miraculously because we'd neglected to look for them earlier in the budgeting process as part of the workshops. They've actually been made possible given the clarity from the local government settlement, which has only just recently come through. So up until central government confirmed what the funding was going to be for this year, we were not in a position to make these decisions. Had we been in such a position, clearly they would have been discussed and debated at the budget workshop. So I think actually it shows great credit to the joint administration working cross-party and across multiple departments in identifying things that we are able to deliver when additional funds become available very, very quickly. And I'm quite proud of Councillors Albert and Jarvis for how swiftly they put these amendments together. I think that's everything that we need to say on this now.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis Harburg. Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Fake.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think that's a lovely turn of phrase, quite proud. Is that damned by too faint praise, but never mind. I'm quite proud of Rishi and his team in central government then for passing the cash down that allows them to spend it on these schemes. I think that I need to say nothing more.
Thank you, Councillor Fake. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief one. I just wanted to say that if anyone thought the item B on the swimming pool open was a knee-jerk reaction to the petition and that we've only put it in because the petitioners turned up last time, just want to point out that we did extend the opening on the Hitchin pool by a week last year. So it's not totally new idea. We have been exploring it for a while.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Anybody else? Does Councillor Albert wish to exercise his right to reply on the amendment? No. Thank you, Councillor Albert. So we are ready to vote. It's a recorded vote for 2.6.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Are there any further amendments? Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a little something that came up actually from Councillor Albert's speech there. So I was awake and listening, and I did pick something up. He mentioned about the community events and how important these are to community. He mentioned particularly Holocaust Day the other day. Last November, we had a bit of an issue with the Remembrance Service, particularly in Letchworth, because of the lack of funding and help from the council with it. And those who went will remember it was a very emotional day. You were there for yourself, Chair. And I think we could do something in this budget just to make sure that we do partake in that. We do help her that this year, and we do something, whether it comes from existing budgets, perhaps the community budget not, but perhaps we could put £5,000 from somewhere, Councillor Albert, to help towards the cost of running Remembrance Sundays.
Councillor Dennis Harburg, you want to reply?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I applaud David's interest and support certainly for the community events and various days that we hold across the district. Specifically on the Remembrance Day event in Letchworth, work is already being undertaken right now to make sure that lessons have been learned by all organisations and parties that were involved in setting that event up last year, and everybody is adequately assisted in moving forward for the future to avoid those issues and problems being repeated. I don't think that this space and this time, though, is the right place for us to go into the ins and outs of what's happening, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you offline about it.
Councillor Levitt.
Thank you. With that assurance that we are doing something for it this year, I'm happy to stay with that. Thank you for the assurance, Councillor Dennis Harburg.
Thank you. Any further amendments? Right, going back to Ian Albert now. Is there any further debate on the substantive motion? We've done that, haven't we? And Councillor Jarvis has spoken. Do you speak? Councillor Jarvis, where have all these requests come from? The substantive, sorry. Councillor Sam Collins.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to congratulate Councillors North and Albert on a fantastic budget. It'd be nice if there was a bit more money from central government for certain things. But what I really wanted to talk about was Councillor Albert talked about always looking forward to tomorrow and the future. And one of the things about looking forward to tomorrow is also learning the lessons of the past and understanding and celebrating the heritage of the place that you are in. And within this budget, there's some pretty exciting stuff if you're into history and heritage, particularly with North Arts Museum, where we're going to be launching a fantastic new series of evening events, open to the public, free at a point of access, ticketed, where you can go along and have a completely different experience to anything. It's very similar to what's been run at the Science Museum in the past. And that really underlines this joint administration's commitment to arts and culture in North Hertfordshire, something that's been long lacking from this area under previous administrations. And I think it just to underline how committed we are to arts and culture, and particularly heritage in our area, is the new museum store. This isn't a big warehouse that's going to be built on an industrial estate in Hitchin. Well, it sort of is, but it's going to have additional elements and additional functionality. You will be able to visit it. You'll be able to study the history and the heritage of North Hertfordshire as well. And I'm really proud to announce that the first of these evening events will be around the work that's been going on just outside Hitchin at Nine Springs, and revealing what it is we actually found out there in the fields just beyond the edge of Hitchin, and how it's far more important and far more interesting than even we expected going into those fields. So I'd urge you all to come along to those events, and people watching at home, we're going to have some really exciting stuff coming up at North Hertfordshire Museum. And this joint administration investing in arts and culture in a way that's never happened before in North Hertfordshire. So big congratulations, and I fully support this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Levitt on the substantive motion.
Thank you, Chair. Question on paragraph 5.2 on page 24 says business ratepayers will be consulted on the proposals within this report once it has been published before the budget discussed with full council today. And that's a statutory consultation that's required. The papers were published on the 1st of February, if I remember rightly. That gives us 6 working days for the consultation with business ratepayers. How were business ratepayers made aware that this consultation was there to be done online or by email? And how many responses did we get?
Could I ask for a response on that, please?
If Mr. Cooper would like to pick that one up for us, provide some further detail.
Thank you, Chair. Do you want to answer that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's okay. We engage with the business groups through the sort of overarching organisations. So we contacted the bids across the district, as well as the Chamber of Commerce. As with as in previous years, unfortunately, it was the early responses, but we did engage them as soon as we had the final budget papers available, and sent them an email to let them know it's on the website. So I think we did all we could to try and engage with local businesses. You may be aware in the past we have had little events where we've invited some of the ratepayers along. They were historically not very well attended. So we have moved the online only approach, and unfortunately a similar result in terms of the consultation results.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I couldn't help notice I felt we got a little bit good cop, bad copped at the start of this evening. We had the leader introduce the budget and explain how we intend to raise council tax again, and how we are forced to do this by austerity and central government. And then we had the executive member moving the budget, talking about all of these wonderful new schemes we're introducing. And I couldn't help but wonder if we are doing so, does that not show that far from being forced to raise taxes, this is a political choice to tax and spend, not a financial fait accompli from central government? I also took a little bit of issue with the phrasing of not raising taxes as a loss to the council. Now, to me, a loss is giving up funds you had previously and no longer have. Whereas, in fact, what we should always remember is this is other people's money. This is other people's money that we should aspire to take from them as little of as possible. And yet I felt the language used portrayed quite a sense of entitlement to, really. My main regret in all of this, though, is the increase in the brown bin charges. Now, I know this is only a small increase. It, however, to me represents a clear and a little bit depressing change of policy, with the administration conceding that these are a necessary evil. The executive member moving the budget said that yesterday has gone, and clearly that is the case, as the old arguments that we shouldn't be charging for garden waste at all are clearly the politics of yesteryear. I do understand all of the arguments about timing of changes in power of the council and how we would have removed these charges if we could. And that is valid in many ways, but none of it validates now increasing these charges further. I know it's only an inflationary increase, and I know it was only a small rise in parking charges, and I know it's only the maximum we're allowed to raise council tax by. But what it actually represents is our part in a cost of living crisis that is hitting the poorest hardest. And I know this won't change anything, but I really wanted to say that I just deeply regret that we feel the need to increase these charges. And I'm sure that many councillors, even those who are about to vote in favour of this budget as a whole, will share these feelings.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to also put on record my thanks to the officer teams that have worked on this budget, particularly for Ian Cooper and his team for the finance workshop that we had with the Conservative group, and also for Jo Duffy and all the work that she has done with her teams over the pandemic year to distribute the many grants. And I would like to put on record that this council has received and distributed many, many grants that have come from central government to support our businesses and to support not only the businesses, but also the community groups out there that needed this additional help and support during the pandemic year. And also, I don't think we should go without also recognising the tremendous work that went on promoting from our communications teams, promoting the vaccination programme and how successfully that was rolled out through our district. But this budget that we have heard from Councillor Albert tonight, and it did get, I mean, very kindly, and I do thank you for sending me your speech beforehand, but it did take you to about page 10 before you actually got into the nitty-gritty of the budget. So we did have a lot of listening to do on your party political broadcast, as I'll kind of call it. But
Councillor Strong, please.
There are some parts in this budget that one would welcome, and certainly the additional monies that you're looking at for investment in planning officers. This council has always had a good reputation for the planning department, and it is an income generator for us. And it's clearly at the moment slightly failing, particularly as we have such a amount of building to be done through the district. And at the moment, with only planning applications being determined at a sort of a 60% rate, it's clearly not good enough. So clearly that department needs some help, and so pleased to see there's a growth item there for that. And as I said, this is a revenue generating. Also in this budget, there's some growth items for the commercialisation department, and certainly under Chloe Gray, we're very starting to see some small beginnings of revenue generation that is very welcome for this council, and which we hope will be take us into the future. However, it is a shame that there's not been any what I would call big ideas and highlights and some big opportunities for generating the income. Certainly commercialisation was set up 3 years ago, but this joint administration coalition really hasn't given it enough direction to actually get that on a path for success. I know Councillor Sam Collins talked lovingly about the museum and the events, and certainly that was an investment that this Conservative administration put in place with the project for the new museum that was built in Hitchin. Like Councillor Davis, I'm quite shocked, I think, really, to see that this administration, who had campaigned so much about taking out bin charges, are now trying to increase them. So for that, and that reason alone, I cannot support this budget. I really would have hoped that this was something that they had not done. And certainly when we had the budget workshops, we did feedback.
Could you conclude
through the channels? Pardon?
Conclude, please. Finish. I think he was actually presenting the budget. Excuse me. Continue, please, Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think it is normally politeness to let the Leader of the Opposition actually have a little bit of extra time when responding to the budget. But I will therefore conclude, very sorry, but this budget is not one that one can support. But there are good parts in it, so I won't vote against it. I will abstain.
Councillor Judy Billing.
Just very, 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 very briefly. Having listened, I think, to 41 or 42 budgets in this chamber, for the party who have been in control for the majority of the time that I've been a member of this council, to talk about not enough big ideas, complain about the politicising apparently of a budget speech, and complain about the length of time that the portfolio holder took to deliver that speech is so phenomenally hypocritical, in my personal opinion, having heard so many speeches that were so long and so political over so many years, that I just find it astounding. Now, I know that some of the people who have made those comments are quite new in the chamber and haven't heard a lot of budget speeches, but to claim that the executive member giving the budget speech in a council should not be being political with their values and their understanding and their policies is frankly nonsense. So could we stop that now, please, and get on with it?
Thank you, Councillor Billing. Councillor Compton.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to echo the comments that Councillor Davies has just said about numerous increases over the years, which I find are a little hollow when we're saying we don't have any money, when we are putting in such projects that do give benefit, but do also hurt people when we're cutting services, increasing charges to other services. My main concern past the brown bin charges was actually the introduction of costs to replacement of other bins. Now, as somebody who had a broken bin lid from the waste recycling team earlier in the year, waste and recycling team, I had 2 broken bin lids. I've had both bins replaced, which I've been very fortunate to have. If I was having to pay to replace my wheelie bin when the services that came to, collect my waste were the ones that broke it, is a little bit unfair. And I think a lot of people would feel the same if they're getting charged £40 for a new bin, if their bin has been damaged by council services. I think where it says in the budget that, it might reduce people trying to put in the number of requests for, I try and find it, sort of minimal repairs, if you like. I was actually getting quite a lot of issues in the summer when my bin broke or the lid broke because of all the rain going into the waste bin. Is there going to be, I'd rather hope that we could look at a way that, if it's a small issue like a broken bin, that a replacement lid could be sent that could be quite easily fixed, taken off and replaced by residents as an option. And I think maybe if the council could look at that in the future, that would be quite valued and welcomed from people, because I think this £40 charge and £25 for a refurbished bin is quite frankly ridiculous, when I imagine somewhere in the remit of 90% of bins that are broken are going to be broken by the waste team. And also if a bin's stolen, and that's not fair to the resident either. I think that's a bit of an issue that is overlooked in this budget. Aside from that, I do agree with Councillor Strong. There are some very good points in this budget, so I would commend Councillor Albert, and all the officers for putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Compton. Councillor Hone?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It was mentioned about previous speeches by the finance portfolio holder, and somebody said they had, I think Judy Councillor Billings said she'd attended 40 of them. I gave nearly half of those to this authority. I gave 17 of them to this authority. And I have to say that the speech I gave was prepared not by me personally, it was prepared by certain normality, yeah? And therefore politics came out of it completely without just the odd succulent point put in. But certainly they were not very political, and I would respectfully suggest that if you thought they were, go back and look at them again, and you realise that what was issued were not political at all. They were very, very substantive and talked numbers, not politics. I left that in the capable hands of others who are better at it than me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hone. We'll park that one. Councillor Allen, Amy Allen.
In response to the bins, if Urbisa break it, Urbisa replace it. It was said in the workshop. And George, you're my shadow exec. You should know this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments? So can I return to Councillor Steve Jarvis, who has not spoken yet, a seconder, in case you want to?
And the amendment, Chair.
That's all right then. So we're now to the recorded vote, aren't we, for the whole thing? Yes. I will now take all the recommendations together as amended. It'll be a recorded vote. Could you do the vote, please?
Chair, that motion has carried.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you. And now on to item 11, investment strategy, integrated capital and treasury review. Councillor Ian Albert to present, report and propose without extra time.
Can I just on the previous item? I mean, I didn't get a right to reply, but I was going to say, obviously, and I'm not expecting one, but that we do need actually just to update the numbers there, because we've carried those three amendments, so we will need to actually to make sure that now reflects that we're approving a net expenditure budget of 18.198 million as detailed in Appendix C. That's covered under paragraph recommendation 2.4.
I do apologise for that. Your last reply was forgotten. Would you like us now to continue with item 11?
I mean, the Chair, just obviously to reflect that we will need to make sure that we are actually part.
Just hold on. Just give me a moment. I can't hear what you're saying. Councillor Sake.
Yes, thank you, Matt. I'm terribly sorry to intervene. I'm just concerned that the budget of this authority, which has been clearly not fought over too hard, should not be challenged, and therefore, if I had been chair, I certainly would have amended the budget by saying that the definitive motion as amended, which I don't think you did. I'm quite happy to vote again on that process to make sure there's no question of any challenge. I'm just trying to be helpful.
Thank you, Councillor State. You are helpful.
Can I just clarify? We did have the figure in 2.4, but you had the additional approved amendment figures, which are 75,000, which does give the overall figure that Councillor Albert has alluded to anyway. So although you have the refloated figure wasn't refloated, but you have already approved 2.1 to 2.6, which includes that overall figure. So that'll be the 18.198 million overall. So you have approved the budget as you have agreed. That makes sense.
But thank you for that, Councillor Fake.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Albert.
Cheers. On the investment strategy, obviously this covers obviously how we use our valuable capital resources and receipts, and critical to how we deliver the priorities of our council plan. And how we prudently invest the money we hold on behalf of our residents is just as vital. So following on from the setting of the revenue budget, the investment strategy does indeed set out our capital programme and how we manage our cash balances. Section 5 of the report details some small changes that have arisen since then. And as I explained at Cabinet, since the discussion of the report in December, the sauna facility at North Harts Leisure Centre had to be closed. This has been currently in the capital programme for 23-24 at 250,000. We have discussed with Stevenage Leisure about how to get the facility open again, but also about the cost involved. They've done some work looking at a smaller area being used for the sauna, which would reflect the level of usage and also free up some more space for other activities, e.g. hosting children's parties. And this has reduced the capital bid down to 150,000 and is reflected in the tables. In addition, I've added an additional recommendation to tonight's report, obviously you have in front of you, which set out a paragraph report 2.3 that the council approved bringing forward the 150,000 capital allocation for that refurbishment forward into this financial year 21-22, and this will give the opportunity for the work to start before the 1st of April, and I hope that's welcome. In the same way as with the revenue budget, we're looking for affordable ways to invest in the district and help deliver our council priorities, particularly on climate change. We're pleased to see Settle progressing with the redevelopment on John Barker Place and expect to provide a contribution of just over 1 million in 22-23. This is in line with the agreement that we have in place, and we'll see an increase in affordable housing provision. We continue to invest in renovating 2 play areas each year, targeting those in greatest need. Clearly, we'll set out more detail in the emerging green space strategy. Continue to invest in other elements of our parks and open spaces, including initiatives to save energy and water. And we will continue to ensure that our leisure facilities are kept up to date, and also invest in solar PV and other initiatives to reduce our energy consumption. Investment in a new museum storage facility with an opportunity for it to be used commercially, and Councillor Collins has obviously already mentioned that in an earlier contribution. Now, while it's not yet a formal budget allocation, the Joint Administration remains fully committed to looking at options to create a community space at Charnwood House, the old museum in Hitchin. It's a commitment in our council plan. It's too early to specify a capital allocation as we want to continue to work with community groups on the design of the building and governance on how it should be run, including the best way to leverage potential external grant funding, but we will progress this as fast as we can. We also held a positive site meeting just last week to try and work through what we would need to do to be able to make the building accessible for early use by community groups. This will be prior to plans for full renovation. And we would also like to put in some further proposals in relation to the Dell in Hitchin and looking at how we can work with the community to improve the access to the green space and open air theatre. The work is at an early stage to have reliable estimates of the cost involved, especially as we might need to also look to external grants. But I hope we can make some progress with some quick wins on this in the coming year. The report and Appendix A are necessarily quite detailed, but I'll just touch on a few further points. Pages 5 and 6 of Appendix A set out the need for members and key decision makers to understand treasury and risk management. And the Service Director Resources will ensure there's an annual training programme, and I certainly urge you all to attend. Table 11 on page 18 of Appendix A forecasts that the Council will need to borrow to fund its capital programme from 25 to 26 onwards. As a result, we need to set a minimum revenue provision policy and determine our approach to borrowing. The relevant factors which reflect professional guidance and regulations are set out in the strategy document. Pages 29 to 31 determine how we will invest our surplus cash. The priorities will continue to be security, liquidity, and then yield. The amounts that can be invested in each type or group of generally increased slightly to reflect our forecast balances. The only other change is to the institution rating we use for any non-UK investments. We will always be very prudent and cautious about this. So to conclude, Chair, I'm proposing that the Council agree the recommendations are set out in the paper 2.1 to 2.3, and I move that strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Sam North.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second, and again, will reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Should we go to debate? Who would like to speak? Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I will keep it brief. Again, listening to Councillor Albert and some of the things that he's mentioned in his speech there. Again, John Barker Place, that was a project that long came from when we sold off the council stock to North Herts Home Now Settled, for that was to be a refurbishment project. And again, that was done under the previous Conservative administration. In terms of the work programme for play areas, again, programme set up by the previous Conservative administration. In terms of the museum storage, again, this was something that was it seems to be a bit of a legacy from the museum project that we had, where we delivered a new museum by the previous Conservative administration. And the use of the old museum, Charmwood House, again, that was something that was a leftover from the work that was done to create the new museum. And again, it's something that needs to be progressed. It was started by the previous Conservative administration, and it needs to come to fruition. So after 3 years, perhaps some of these projects that were started by this side of the House might be continued, and perhaps we'll see some resolution to them going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Strong talked about the play area renovation programme that was instituted by the previous Conservative administration. She appears to have forgotten that the major part of that consisted of closing play areas when there were a large number that were removed. And of those that remained, they made sufficient provision in their capital programme to refurbish each play area about once every 45 or 50 years. And since the life of play equipment is 15 to 20 years, it was clear that their capital programme was one of, at best, managed decline for our play areas. The capital budget that we have tonight sets out a substantial increase in the monies available for renovating play areas, and also that it will be applied in ways that maximises the benefit we get from that budget. The administration has also brought to an end, unfortunately it progressed a long way before we could bring it to an end, but brought to an end the process of play area closures. So to claim that the previous Conservative administration were responsible for a magnificent programme of play area refurbishments is, I think, perhaps a little optimistic. Perhaps she's learning from the lead given to her by the party leadership nationally.
Other comments? Councillor Sam North.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I find it astounding that the extent of opposition tonight has amounted to bin lids and taking credit for the work that has been done by this administration over the past 3 years. Clearly, our investment strategy and our budget has been accepted widely across this chamber. We've seen no amendments, no addition in any way, shape or form from the Conservative Party throughout the entire process. If they had ideas, then they would have put them forward, but they don't, and they clearly will not have ideas going forward either. It is just a replica of what is going on nationally. Nothing is happening, and it is really taking a toll on its citizens. So, Chair, I'm very delighted that no amendments have been sort of posed by the Conservatives, because yet again, no ideas, and they're just...
Can I stop you there, please, Councillor North?
No.
Councillor Barnard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I find that quite distasteful, actually. But,
Councillor Barnard, I think I dealt with that, so
I beg your pardon.
I showed my thoughts on that.
Fine.
Carry on, please.
Thank you. I didn't ask you. When I was the portfolio holder for leisure, we actually had a long-standing look at all of the play areas which were not being used. In fact, by putting several bits and pieces on those to ensure that we could absolutely assure that they were not being used. We then removed some of the equipment which was old and antiquated and put in modern timber adventure type equipment. So they weren't closed, they were amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Can I return to Councillor Albert then, please, to reply?
It's hard to know where to start, but I'll start with where I finished the early report. Is indeed yesterday has gone, and now we are looking at tomorrow, and that's why this investment strategy, I think, is the right way forward. As Councillor Jarvis has I think has reminded colleagues here, that one of the key things that, and what I have to say, one of the key things, while many people across this district actually voted against the Conservatives over that period in 2018 and 19, was around the playground closure programme, and how appalling it was handled and run, and how good it was to manage to keep some playgrounds open. And when you saw the hundreds of parents and children actually protesting about the closure of the Rosehill playground in Hitchin. So I think I remember that. But I think the key thing here is that what I've detected, although obviously there's been some concerns, is actually what we're proposing here is broadly welcomed, and I hope that everyone here will actually support this investment strategy so we can actually go forward together. So happy to propose these recommendations, and I hope you'll all vote for them.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. Should we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion has carried.
Thank you. That is the end of the business for this evening. So that's the close of the meeting. And can you just wait until we stop streaming, please? And then the officers will tell you the order in which you are to go out.